I believe everyone has some
Mhm.
level of ability.
Yeah.
It's just like intuition. We all have some degree of ability. In my case, I feel like I was psychic my whole life. But honestly, when I was a child, there were small incidents. There were just a few here and
Mhm.
there. Well, I did actually channel my great grandfather when I was 8, and I got an evidential medium there, but that was unusual. So most of the time, I would say that I was psychic my whole life. But then it actually wasn't until 2017 when I got a direct message from Spirit telling me to become a medium. That's when I started learning and developing those skills as well.
Wow. Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and soul purpose coach, and fellow griever, Tara Accardo. Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast, Kelly. I have been so looking forward to this conversation for a lot of reasons. I'm so excited to just share you and your beautiful gift with listeners here. I had the absolute pleasure of having a reading with you myself and can just attest to this, again, just absolutely incredible gift that you have. And I really want to dig into this with you today in terms of, what this looks and feels like for you and how you came to get into this work and all the good stuff. But first and foremost, just a big warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to
Of
be here.
course.
I appreciate it.
My pleasure. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, I really because I don't think we necessarily talked about this when we did our reading together, but I'd love to get like a little bit of your background and how you got into this work and when your gifts started coming for you. But one thing you did do when we had our session together that I loved was you clarified, like kind of what is a medium, what is a psychic, having both of those gifts. So just for anyone here listening who's maybe like not totally clear on the difference and
Mhm.
also what an evidential psychic medium is and like how that might differ from
Mhm.
other things people might hear out there. I'd love to just clarify that first.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So a psychic is just somebody who picks up on information outside of the five physical
Mhm.
senses. So, you hear, for example,
Yeah.
clairvoyance, where someone psychically sees something. That is one of the many psychic skills. So psychic just picks up on information outside of the five physical senses, whereas a medium is someone who can then use those skills to connect with loved ones who've crossed
Right.
over. So it's kind of interesting. A little fun fact is that every medium technically is a psychic,
Right.
but not every psychic is a medium.
Interesting. Okay. I always
Yeah.
think it's so good to clarify that because, especially when someone is looking to potentially work with a medium, I think a lot
Mhm.
of the people here listening, are perhaps interested in the connecting with our loved ones part, especially because like a lot of listeners
Right.
here, we have lost loved ones. And that's what we're curious about, right? We want to keep that conversation with them going. And so, but I think there's a lot of us also, it's just like, okay, what's in my future? What what's coming down the pipeline for me. So I think it's always so interesting.
But so then the second part of the question that you asked was to talk about what is evidential,
Yes. Yeah.
right? So when it comes to mediumship, you know, anybody can say, "Oh, your loved one's with you. They love you. They're proud of
Mhm.
you." That's great. It's beautiful, but that's also all very
Yes.
general. So anytime you see a medium, it's a good idea to choose a medium who is an evidential
Right.
medium. And an evidential medium just means that they pick up on information that that supports that it truly is that person. It's validating in some
Mhm.
way. So for example, I am an evidential medium and I will pick up on details such as a spirit's appearance, their personality, how they passed, inside jokes, family memories. I even get exact names in about half of my readings.
Yes, you did that. I can confirm all of that from our reading as well, or it was like really, really close, and even down to like hair color and even little like signs and symbols that I have for my loved ones, or like my mom especially, or even the way that my mom passed away from cancer, esophageal cancer. Right, I remember like the throat and all of that were
Mhm.
coming up, and like but also things came up for you. I know that like there was no way that you could have known from anything I posted or anything like that because I know
Yeah.
I think that I have friends that, kind of can question the process sometimes, or maybe not the process, but maybe just like finding the right person. And I definitely want to dig
Mhm.
into that with you as well in terms of, finding the right medium for you, so to speak. But yeah, I think I see that a lot in terms of like skeptics, if you will, my husband being one of them. And I'm like, no, this is real, actually, thank you. But I think what you're saying about having that evidence behind it really, it's not even so much about convincing someone, but it's just to validate that, like, this isn't just any old Tom, Dick, or Harry,
Mhm.
on the other side that's coming through. This is, like,
Yeah,
really personal.
like, what I believe is that I don't think an evidential medium is necessarily going to convince a
Yeah,
skeptic, but that's not my job.
exactly.
I don't convincing a skeptic, I mean, people have reasons that they're
Yep,
skeptics, and not everybody should be trusted. So,
absolutely.
whatever, I'm not going to try to convince a
Mhm,
skeptic. But the nice thing about evidential information is that then when I've said, I'm getting the esophageal
mhm.
cancer, then when I move into the more heartfelt
Yes.
messages about she's with you, she loves you, she watches over you, then you can trust those messages too because you've had some validation that it's truly your mother speaking.
Exactly, yeah. Alright, so let's back up a little bit then and talk about how you came into this gift. I hear a lot of different mediums, were, born with it, so to speak, or, remember from a very young age having hits like this, if you will. There's one I've been to that actually went through a very traumatic accident, and the ability sort of came after that, so I'm really curious what that process has been like for you.
Sure. Well, I would like to start just by acknowledging that I believe everyone has some
Mhm.
level of ability.
Yeah.
It's just like intuition. We all have some degree of ability. In my case, I feel like I was psychic my whole life, but honestly, when I was a child, there were small incidents. There were just a few here and
Mhm.
there. Well, I did actually channel my great-grandfather when I was 8, and I got an evidential medium there, but that was unusual. So most of the time, I would say that I was psychic my whole life, but then it actually wasn't until 2017 when I got a direct message from spirit telling me to become a medium. That's when I started learning and developing those skills as well.
Wow. Oh my gosh. What can you explain, like, how that hit came through to you? Was it that, yeah, like, what sort of sense, I guess, if you will, the clairvoyance, the claircognizant,
Mhm.
whatever?
Yeah, so well, since you're asking about the
Yeah.
clairs, I'll just mention I am an empath, so I do feel the emotions of others. I'm clairvoyant, so I psychically see images. Clairaudient, so I hear messages. Clairalient, so I get psychic smells. Clairsentient, so I physically feel the energy. And also claircognizant, so sometimes I
It's
just
just this
know
knowing.
things.
Yeah. That's incredible.
But everybody's a little bit different. Now, when I started with my mediumship work, I was not strong in all of those clairs. And even now, I don't call myself clairgustant, which is
Okay.
taste. But it happened a couple of times, but not regularly. But I just had some of these skills, but I never identified as a medium. And what happened was in 2017, my husband and I were on a hike through DuPont State Forest, High Falls Waterfall. He was doing some long exposure photography off to the side. And so I took that opportunity just to sit down at the base of the waterfall and meditate and get in touch with nature and spirit and pray. And I was talking to my loved ones who've crossed over, not expecting any answers, but just talking to whoever was out there. And I asked for a sign. I said, I want to make a difference in the world. If there's something I can do that I'm not already doing now, please give me a sign and I'll try to listen to what I hear. Well, I was expecting something subtle,
Yes.
a friend loans me a book or something like that. Signs, a lot of times these signs are
Yeah.
subtle. But what I got was a lightning bolt, or it felt like a lightning bolt. I got a direct message that just popped into my head to become a medium for loved ones who've crossed over. So I was like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I knew what a medium was. I'd seen them on
Yeah.
TV, but I never identified as a medium. So I said, "Oh, okay. how shall I do this? How? And what I got was a direct message on the spot, just popped into my head. Read books, spend time in meditation, connect with other psychics and mediums. So I started doing all of that right away. By the end of the month, I was channeling.
Oh my god, I just got chills. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was gonna ask you about that. So this is around, like, 2017, even though it sounds like you've really been I intuitive and has really have had this, gift from a very young age. But, I dare I say a little bit more recently, really getting into it. And I was curious because I've heard of other mediums, not even ones that I either have talked to directly or just, like, through videos or something else, that do say exactly what you just said. We all kind of have this ability to some degree, and you can hone in on it. You can kind of train yourself a little bit. So I was so curious about that process. So it sounds like it was just like a mixture of all of these things for you. But that, I mean, I guess I don't have anything to base it off of or compare it to, but that sounds very quick to start channeling.
I was
Yeah.
surprised. I really was. It was easier than I expected it to
Wow.
be. But to be fair, I think it's because I didn't really have a clear understanding of how mediumship
Mhm.
works
Mhm.
before. I think that's really the
Yeah.
key. Like until I had that direct intervention, if
Yeah.
you will, until then, I thought that mediums were special people with special abilities and just like we see in Hollywood in films and whatnot, we see that a medium sees a full-bodied apparition walk into
Yes.
the room and then they have a full conversation with full sentences, right? And that never happened to me
Yeah.
growing up, so I never thought that that was
Right.
me. But what I realize now is that a medium is just someone who is highly
Yeah.
sensitive, and then they listen for those messages. And then the other thing is that once you are highly sensitive and you're kind of in that zone, you can develop a system, a series of signs and symbols so that things will go much more
Right.
quickly. For example, I have a symbol where if I feel something in my left shoulder, that is a symbol for an accident, accidental, unintended, poor choice, or medical
Yeah.
mistake. So that's just a symbol. Yeah. Well, since clairsentience, the physical feel of energy is one of my stronger clairs, that the feeling of touch or physical energy localized like that is not a difficult thing for me to receive. But now I can receive that and instantly know what I'm going to say to my
Yeah.
client. So that by using signs and symbols, a medium can boom, 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 start to get a lot more information much more clearly.
Right. I remember that coming up in our reading too. I got that shoulder and it was it was accurate. It really hit on, and then it felt like it kind of snowballed from there and things really started to kind of like make more sense and
Mhm.
we were able to kind of like narrow it down for lack of a better term of like exactly what it was or there was multiple things in a couple cases and we're like, okay, let's see where we're going with
Mhm.
this and with that and few people came through.
Mhm.
So such a beautiful
Yeah.
process. So, if someone here listening is so it's really funny. I actually have several people that have come to me or one way or another that seem to have this sort of ability, whether they, can it's usually through one of the clairs, one way or another. They kind of just sort of know things or they have premonitions like while they're sleeping or something
Mhm.
like that or things along those lines. If someone here listening is feeling like they maybe don't have that, but want that, they wanna work on it because they wanna be able to, like, connect with their loved one a little bit better or just,
Mhm.
maybe build on that sensitivity to the other side, if you will. Where would you recommend someone starts if they're just, like, getting curious, if they're just trying to open up to this gift a little bit more? What would you say to someone here listening?
Mhm. Read books, spend time
All
in
the things that you've done.
meditation, connect.
Yeah.
But more specifically, I mean, reading books, there's so many books out there that will kind of guide you through the
Mhm.
process. One in particular that I enjoyed is called So You Want to Be a Medium by Rose
I
Vanden
love that.
Eden. That was a great book, but there's so many that I've read. And then meditation, the thing about meditation, when you learn to quiet the mind like you do in
Yeah.
meditation, that really opens you up to be sensitive to so much out there in the energetic
Mhm.
realm. So that's key. And you don't have to meditate hours on end. Even if you just meditate a few minutes a day, it's a start. With meditation, every minute counts.
Absolutely.
And connecting with other psychics and mediums. So I don't believe that you have to go through like a long
Mhm.
course, but certainly you can learn things from other mediums. I do offer psychic development mentorship where I do one-on-one mentoring with people. But there are lots of mediums that will offer courses and
Mhm.
whatnot. I would suggest that you don't need to spend a lot of
Yeah.
money on these things because there's so many resources out
Mhm.
there. And you don't learn it any better from, an expensive course than an
Right.
inexpensive course. As long as the material, the person is reputable, it's really more about you and your development.
Yeah, absolutely. To just touch on the meditation for a moment, because I know I talk about this a lot on the podcast, meditation, breath work, it's all great. And I know people are probably like, maybe rolling their eyes or like, okay, Tara, again with this, or like, such a buzzword, right? But it's so true. It's so good for you. If someone is here listening, and actually even like mediumship aside, or trying to get in touch with our loved ones aside, I think that especially grievers when we're going through a lot and it's like the last thing on our mind, or we can't quiet our mind, or we feel like we can at least, right? Or it's really difficult because we're grieving. We have a lot going on. There's a lot of emotions and all the things. Is there just like one kind of tip or piece of guidance that you could give someone here that is, maybe really wants to try meditation or really is trying, but they just cannot get themselves to kind of relax into it a little bit, because I know there's just so many people that kinda struggle with that.
Yeah. So the main thing is that it's a meditation practice, right? It's
Love
something that
that.
you
Yeah.
practice. You have to keep
Yeah.
at it. Consistency. Consistency is what's really important, not perfection. So a lot of times people think, oh, I'm sitting in this chair, my knee itches, but I'm not going to scratch it because I'm sitting here meditating. I'm not going to, I'm going to not pay attention to my knee. My mind is blank. My knee is not bothering me, you know. Whereas if you just reached down and scratched your knee and got it over with, it
That
wouldn't
could
be a
be
big
that
deal,
disruptive. Yeah.
right? And so you're not going to ever have a meditation, even in a single sit down, where it's like, oh, that meditation was
Right.
perfect. No, the mind always will have things coming and going in it, but you just have to learn to redirect. So when you start having those things come in, say, okay, I'm going to put that aside and now just focus again on my
Yeah.
breath.
Yeah, I always like to say that too. It's like, it's human that we're gonna have thoughts come in, what we need to do for dinner, what time we need to pick the kids up, whatever. Like those things are gonna,
Right.
and I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to kind of like shoo those thoughts away and have like blank mind. And I'm like, that's not the point, right? It's to like allow those
Yeah.
thoughts to like lovingly come in, linger. Okay, okay, now let it go, and I love that you clarified that. That's come up on the podcast before too. It is a
Correct.
practice, and I think people can get a little bit frustrated sometimes because 'cause they're like, "Oh, I just wanna relax. I just wanna be able to do it now," but
Yeah.
it's like but like you said, every minute counts. I love that you said that because
Mhm.
it just
Mhm.
feels a little less overwhelming perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might even just, between business calls, set a
Yeah.
timer for 60 seconds,
Oh, I
you
love
know,
that. Yeah.
and just close your eyes and breathe deeply because 60 seconds of slow, deep breaths is
Oh,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say even outside of mediumship, that's just good
Yeah.
regulation of our emotions and all the things, and, uh, who doesn't need a little bit of a break from work every once in a while? It's healthy, it's
Right?
good for us.
Yeah.
So I'm so
Yeah.
curious because I was so when we first got into our session together, you just had this beautiful practice. First of all, you just have such a calming and beautiful energy anyway. And
Thank
I was
you.
in just like a soft, beautiful voice and all of the things. And so I was so just immediately like, oh, okay, so like grounded when we first got into our session and really felt the energy of you kind of like how would you describe kind of dropping in a little bit and starting to kind of like make that connection. Because what you've explained, and I've heard a lot of mediums kind of explain it this way too, is like you kind of have to like raise your vibrations, and then like our loved ones and everyone has to like kind of lower theirs. So can you just walk us
Right.
through sort of, whatever you're willing to reveal here of sort of your process
Yeah.
of, like if someone here is like, okay, what could I expect in a session, and how do you tap in? How does it start for you? What does that
Yeah.
look like?
Well, so I do have a series of energetic practices that I do just part of my daily routine, if you
Mhm.
will, when it comes to doing mediumship work. So, for example, and actually, I'll usually do this in my morning meditation or when I'm preparing for a session right before a client appointment. I will do the protection bubble.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've heard other people talk about protection
Mhm.
bubbles, but I'll just visualize, imagine, if you will, intentionally put out this visualization of a bubble of protective divine white light. And then I will say this affirmation. I say, I surround myself with divine white light, encompassing universal love, joy, healing, and protection. I freely radiate universal love to others while allowing myself to be affected only by positive thoughts, feelings, and emotions. With ease and grace, this or something better. Thank you.
Mhm.
So that starts my day or prepares
Mhm.
me. Then, when I'm doing my actual work, I have another affirmation, words that I say that which I also incorporate the energetic feeling around these words. And that is, I'm opening the door and clearing the way to invite guides or spirits of high vibration or benevolent intent to bring forth positive messages that serve highest good. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then I'll go through my process. And usually when I start off mediumship, I'll ask spirit to come through first with
Mhm.
gender, and then I'll ask them to tell me their generation, like is it an older generation, a younger generation, same generation? And then I'll ask for how they died.
Mhm.
And so usually I'll get, and it's not always consistent, but I usually try to get all those things right off the
Right.
beginning, right off the bat. And then we'll move on to more unique things, I am getting a caterpillar or, crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when I'm done with the session, I will close it out with another affirmation where I say, I'm ending the session, closing the door with love and gratitude. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, it really is such a well-rounded process, and it really you really do kind of feel the energy open up a little bit and then like peacefully close out and everything. And
Mhm,
I was curious
mhm,
as you were talking, this question came up to me, like, how do you as an evidential psychic medium, like how do you protect? I mean, you kind of talked through your process of how you protect your own energy.
mhm.
Do you feel I'm just so curious, do you feel kind of, like, drained at all after you do readings like that? Like, how does it just feel for you energy-wise? Or do you feel because you sort of have these practices that you actually feel like, okay, throughout the day?
Well, I do feel
Yeah.
okay, but I definitely have to limit the number of readings that I can
Mhm.
do in a
Mhm.
day. For me, I currently limit myself at about 4 full-length
Yeah.
readings in a
Mhm.
day, because after that, I just find that I'm tired
Yeah.
enough that I might not be as effective on the 5th reading,
Yeah.
as I was on the first one.
Right.
So I'll limit the number of readings, and then sometimes I am very tired
Mhm.
afterwards. There've been times where I've gotten home from my office and just had to take a nap.
I'm sure.
I mean, it happens, sometimes I'm just totally drained, or if I'm doing a big event, like I do a lot of group
Okay, I was gonna
readings.
ask you
I
that, yeah.
Yeah, I love to donate fundraising. I love
Oh,
to
that's
donate
great.
mediumship readings as fundraising events for nonprofit
Yeah.
organizations. So I try to do that, every month or so.
Mhm.
I love doing that, but that definitely anytime I do a group reading, there's a lot of energy with
Yeah.
that. So I'll block all my other appointments for the
Yep.
day and really make sure I get plenty of sleep, be careful about what I'm
Mhm.
eating.
It is a
Yeah. So
process. Yeah. Mind,
it
body,
is.
spirit
It is.
connection. It's yeah. Can you walk through that group reading, process really quick? Like, how do you like, I guess I have a couple questions here. Like, how does spirit come through to you in that way? Like, does it feel kind of like bombarding sometimes? Like, do you sometimes have loved ones that are like, "No, let me get to the first of the line. Like, I got someone to talk to." Or is spirit patient and nice? Like, what what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I work closely with my spirit
Mhm.
guides, and I feel like they assist with making sure that things are more orderly on the other
You're
side,
like, "Wait your turn."
right? Like, "Make a line, folks, make a line,"
I love
right?
that.
Uh, but it's interesting because, when I'm doing a one-on-one
Mhm.
session, well, actually, let me just kind of back up and say that anytime I'm doing this type of work, it depends on my energy.
Yeah.
So all those things I said, I need to be well rested, et cetera. It depends on the client's energy.
Mhm.
So if I've got someone who's a strong skeptic, I'm going to have to work a lot harder to get those messages through. Or if somebody's in a bad mood, I have to work really hard.
Mhm.
If they're a natural complainer, I'll have to work really hard. So it depends on the client's energy,
Mhm.
but then it also depends on the spirit's
Sure.
energy. So it's interesting, like if there's a spirit coming through who, while in the physical world, they were very
Mm.
quiet, very gentle, you know, they're going to be harder to
Yeah.
channel. But if someone's coming through and they're like, I'm here, I'm like, they're here.
It's typically my mother. Yeah.
And, and so what happens is in a group mediumship reading, a lot of times I'm not going to do as many of those very
Right.
quiet spirits coming
Yeah.
through because the louder, stronger connections are going to be the ones that I'm
Yep.
getting. But I'm thankful for that because, I'm standing on stage in front of, 500 people and, I want to make sure something
Right,
happens.
yeah. Like, someone's gotta come through here. Yeah.
But it's happened. I mean, that's the thing. I'm such a perfectionist. Like I work my tail
Mhm.
off and and I put myself into a job where I don't have control.
Yeah.
I cannot control who comes through. That's up to
Right.
spirit. So I get myself on stage and it has happened before. And I just had to keep it real and be authentic. And I remember there was a group session I did in Sedona
Mm.
and I was like, let me just see if I get that answer. And I'm like, and I listened and I'm not getting the answer. So I said to the, hundreds of people, I'm like, you know, that feeling like when you're standing on stage in front of hundreds of people and you're not getting the answer, you know, what can you
Yeah.
do? So you just have to kind of laugh about it and be authentic. And then, but fortunately, then I kind of reset
Yeah.
when I address it, the elephant in the room,
Mhm.
and then I go back to it, and I was able to get an answer. But it's not easy.
No. Well, and it's also I mean, I appreciate that so much because better to be just call it out and be authentic about it than try and force something. Like, I think you mentioned earlier,
Exactly.
they're are how do I put this? Unqualified people out there doing readings, I would imagine, and, that maybe try and force a square peg in a round hole, and and that I would imagine is so
Yeah.
damaging to the person getting the reading, just all the whole process is just so slimy.
Yeah, no, it's I'm glad that you brought that up because not every medium is completely transparent like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
A lot of times, especially, if you're in a situation that has pressure, like you're standing on
Mhm.
stage, you don't want to come off like a
Of
failure,
course,
right?
yeah.
So I can understand where people might try to kind of bluff their way through
Mhm.
something, but it is important to find mediums who are ethical, who are legitimate. Sometimes they may be outright con
Yeah,
artists. Sometimes they may have good intentions, but they're a little delusional or just not as good as they
yeah.
think. And then sometimes you get some people that are really quite good. I actually just published like last week, I published the psychic credibility scoring system. It's a
Ooh.
free little mini booklet that's on my
Okay.
website, channelingwhitelight.com, so people can go there and download it. And what you can do is any medium that you're thinking about using, just skim through the psychic credibility scoring system and see does their score end up indicating that they're likely legitimate,
Okay.
or does it show potential signs, red flags of potential fraud?
Wow. So how does that work? Like, people can go there and rate them essentially? Like, so those of us who have had a reading can go there and rate, or how does that work?
So it's a free guide.
Okay.
It's like it's a small book basically, about 60
Got it.
pages.
Okay.
And And what you do is it lists off 50 different evaluation elements. And you go through the list one by one and you answer the question and you're like, well, does this apply?
Okay.
Yes. To add 10 points? No. Subtract 10 points,
Got it.
and they're very straightforward. Some of them, like, some of these are very obvious, did the person make you put a lot of pressure on you?
Mhm, mhm.
Did they pressure you? Did you feel uncomfortable? Did you have a bad feeling? Right? So some of those are really the big red
Right.
flags, but then there are others that are much more subtle. And it might be that one thing you don't really love, but all the other things are good. Maybe it's just that that medium is kind of learning.
Sure.
Or it might be the opposite, where that you add up just a few of those low point items that are kind of on the
Mhm.
edge, and suddenly you start to see patterns,
Okay.
right? For example, here's one of the questions. The very first question: how did you find them?
Mhm.
Did you find them? Fine, that's good. Okay. Did someone refer you to
Mhm.
them where they had a good reading? Even
Yeah.
better. So 2 points for that. 1 point if you just found them yourself, 2 points if someone referred
Okay.
them. What if they reached out to you and sent you a direct message that they want to do a reading for you?
I've gotten those,
Yeah,
and I have not
that's a
responded
no.
because I'm like,
Right.
I don't know about that." Yeah. Okay.
And the thing is, that's a big red flag
Yeah.
because uh, someone who is a very credible medium, they don't have to reach out to
Yeah.
strangers, right?
Yeah.
And yet there are a lot of con artists who will try to tell you that you're they've got an important message for you, or your loved one is angry with you, or your loved one is stuck and they need your help crossing
Oh my
over.
god.
No, no.
Oh.
These are all high pressure tactics. And I've also had several people impersonate me, steal all my photos from social media,
Oh
set
my
up an account,
gosh.
and then direct message my fans from the fake account.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
people are just the worst.
So, but a very easy, simple fix is never do a reading with someone who reaches out to
Yeah,
you.
good rule of thumb.
Even if it's
Mhm.
free, I still would hesitate because a lot of times it could be something where they kind of get you in the
Yeah.
door and then they pressure
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But if that's the only red flag and then all these other things in the credibility scoring list are positive, maybe that person just needs to have a little guidance that that's not a cool way to
Go about it, kind of.
to
Yeah, yeah.
but that's where the scoring system helps is because it kind of puts together all these different things to look
I
for.
love that so much. That I because I think that's a big problem, like some problem, I guess, for lack of a better term, that some people have, or they're kind of nervous to go to a medium for that reason. I have a friend that is, her dad passed away, and still to this day hasn't been to one because I think she just worries that she frankly worries about what's going to come through. She actually kind of says, actually, this is a great question for you that I was not anticipating asking, but I'm going to ask. So she is worried about basically, like, disturbing him, and just kinda wants to leave him alone. She doesn't wanna, like, disrupt anything going on over there. Would you say that a reading is, like, disruptive in that way? Like, is there kinda any truth to that, or have you heard of that fear before, sort of?
So reading is not going to disrupt your loved
Mhm.
ones because when you think about it, every reputable medium that I've ever seen will always acknowledge we can't guarantee who will come through.
Right.
That's up to spirit,
This is another thing I was
right?
gonna ask you.
And
Okay, good. Yeah.
I can issue the
Right.
invitation, but I can't
You can't
guarantee
force
they'll
them.
be there. So yeah, exactly. I'll shoot over the party invite, but they
They'll
have to
get the email, but they
RSVP.
need to click RSVP, yes, yeah.
And so there's
Mhm.
that they don't have to
Yep.
come. But almost every time when I'm channeling a spirit, the loved ones are delighted to be
Mhm.
there. And a lot of times they outright say
Yeah.
that. There's been a couple times, and I even put this in my website. I'm like, don't book a mediumship session if the only reason you're booking is because you deserve an apology
Oh,
from them,
yeah. Yeah.
right? You want to know why they did what they did and why did you change your will to do this and
Mhm.
if you're angry at your loved one, don't even book a session,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then, I mean, occasionally I will have a spirit come through that they're angry at and they'll give the
Mhm.
answer, but those are not the ones that linger,
Yeah.
right? That have beautiful long messages. So it's completely up to spirit whether or not they come through, and your energy makes so much of a difference. So if you just are missing your loved one and you really would love to just make sure that they're okay and check in with them, that's a beautiful
Yeah.
energy. That's not going to disturb them at all. They're going to love coming through for
Yeah.
that. But on the other hand, even if you don't go see a medium, if you are at home and you have the type of energy where you're like, "Why did you die?" Or, "Give me a sign. I need a sign. Give me a
Like
sign. Give me a
forcing
sign.
it.
Thank you for that sign. I need another sign. I need another one. That sign was yesterday. I need another sign today." You know, you can have energy that makes it hard for spirits to want to come
Mhm.
through, but
Yeah.
you having just a nice mediumship reading, they love it.
Yeah. It's kind of that I hate to almost say it this way, like this desperate energy. And I say that almost because I had a family member not super long after my dad passed away. It was on my dad's side, and they were
Mhm.
so desperate for a sign, and I don't know how much they were trying to make it happen, but I think they were really sad, they were kind of bummed, they weren't, like,
Mhm.
blaming my dad for not sending a sign, but they were just like I was getting some, or that he was coming through in my dreams every so often, and they were like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
just wish that would happen for me," and, there was, like, a little of that in it, and I
Mhm.
feel like what I've noticed in my own journey with this, I guess, is just there is such a surrendering that has to happen. I'm curious your thoughts on this too, like just
Mhm.
a surrendering and just a trust that, like, they'll come through in ways that resonate with you. So for me specifically, and this
Mhm.
was so beautiful because this came through in my reading, was hummingbirds. It's like I was telling you, there's two that live outside in my little patio thing. It's definitely something I associate with my mom. I think even a little bit on my husband's side of someone who had passed away. So that was like a big one for me. And then like coins and a couple,
Right.
there's just like some very specific ones that like if I am trying to get a hold of my loved ones, that they and we have this little agreement, like, okay, if I'm asking for something, if you can just, send one of these my way. And then I try and release that and go about my day. And lo and behold, most of the time, like something tends to pop up. So would you agree with that? There's just this little bit of,
It
giving it a
definitely does. It's again, just like when you're doing a
Mhm.
reading, it depends on my energy, it depends on the client, it depends on the
Yeah.
spirit. Well, when it comes to giving signs, it depends on your energy and it depends on the
Mhm.
spirit. So the spirit is more likely to put forth the effort to bring a sign through for someone that they were close
Mhm.
to, a
Mhm.
daughter, right? But also, you do this podcast, you're very open-minded to the whole
Right.
process. So when you have a dream, you think, oh, that may have been a sign,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
Whereas other people may have a dream and then they may say, oh, I had a dream, but we were riding the bus and we never rode the bus in real life, so that couldn't have been
Mm,
real,
mhm. Yeah.
or something like that. So it kind of depends on their own energy, their own belief system. It varies, with each person,
That
of
makes total
course.
sense. I wanted to ask you too, kind of a little bit on the same note of like, kind of not being able to force our loved ones to come through. Something that I've learned from my early times of going to mediums, and I've only been to a couple, but was, they will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And I think there's a lot of us who will go in maybe hoping for something to be said, something, getting out of it. But like there have been times where I've walked away from a medium or a reading and I was like, not ours, but there's like one or two where the medium did a beautiful job. It wasn't anything, but I was kind of like, I didn't quite get what I wanted or felt like I should have gotten out of
Yeah.
that. But I was like, okay, but maybe that's what I needed to hear. So would you kind of agree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I always, especially if I'm doing a psychic
Mhm.
reading,
Mhm.
let me just back up and say that regardless of whatever type of reading
Yeah.
I'm doing, I focus on the light,
Mhm.
right? So I work in the realm of light. My company name is Channeling White Light because I'm channeling white light towards a better world. And so when I'm doing readings, I seek out messages that will serve highest
Mhm.
good. So I ask I ask that every client hear exactly what they need to hear that serves highest
Hmm.
good. And it's beautiful if that's what they want to hear as well. But yes, I do ask that they hear what they need to hear. And then of course I try, if it's something that I don't think they really wanted to hear, but they need to, of course we'll try to present it in a way that is filled with
Love,
compassion and
yeah.
love. Yeah. When it comes to mediumship readings, though, and well, even psychic readings, like towards the end of the readings that I do, whether it's psychic or mediumship, I will check in with the client.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
Is there something, do you have any other
Hmm.
questions? Is there any other loved one that you were really hoping to connect with who we haven't, connected with yet? Again, I can't guarantee that they'll come
Hmm.
through, but I can issue the invitation.
Yeah.
Do you have questions for your loved ones? Not every medium does that, which kind of surprises
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But I say, do you have a question for your loved one? Sometimes people will bring forth questions that are more like testing.
Hmm.
Like I had this one, she's like, I met with my father, I got together with him once a week on the same day every week. Can he tell you what day
Oh,
that was?
that's so testy.
You know?
Oh,
And I'm like, Thursday. And she's like, right. So, so thank goodness, I had a strong connection with spirit.
wow.
But if that had been one of the quiet spirits and the spirit was like really pushing just to get through the basics, like I'm with you and these are the signs, like all the things that you really need the
Yeah.
most. And then you start throwing in the test questions, right? That's a little
Yeah.
rough. Yeah. But every reading's a little different.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure that that kind of depends a little bit on the person for sure. Maybe the level of skepticism or something. I don't know.
On the other hand, a similar thing though that I actually think is a great thing is if you can kind of have in your mind a few possible things like that you can ahead of a mediumship reading, you can say, Mom, I'd really love it if
Mm-hmm.
you break through, a chickadee
Right.
or the sun rays coming through the cloud, or the lake house. If you can bring through any of those, that I'll know it's you,
Yeah. Great
right?
point. Great point. Yeah. Instead of
And there
asking for it
are
midway.
readings where yeah, and there've been lots of readings where I'll bring through something that to me is moderately interesting. I'm like, "Oh, I'm picking up on a necklace. Do you have a necklace that reminds you of your
Hmm.
son?" And then my client says, "Oh, yes, I do." And I asked him to bring that up,
Oh my God. How
right?
validating is that?
So that's beautiful. I actually got that one on video. That's on my YouTube
Mm.
channel. But so many little excerpts like that. I just love it.
Yeah. Ah, that's so cool. Yeah, and I'm sure it just makes
Yeah.
people feel just that much more validated, and of course, validated in your work and what you do, which, yeah, I'm sure that I would can only
Yeah. The main thing is not to be so tied to
yes.
that,
Yeah, sure.
where if the necklace doesn't come through, that then you feel like the whole thing was a failure, or you discount the other things that were meaningful that did come
Right.
through. Yeah, so just try to ask for certain things, but be
Yeah.
open-minded.
I love that. Good mindset going into, just being realistic about, like, the communication.
It's not like
Yeah.
Hollywood. Yeah.
One of the last things as
Yeah.
we slowly start to wrap up that I wanted to ask you, and I don't know even quite how to ask this or how you might even be able to answer, but feel free to do this however you can. I was just so curious about this sort of how would you word this? Like veil, I guess, that we sort of have between us and the other side, if you will. And I
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel and of the belief that it's thinner than we think it is, like, and a lot of people always look up when they look to their loved ones or something. And I just like to be like, okay, maybe you're over here, maybe you're over here, and there's just this, and like kind of what we were talking about earlier in terms of like when you are getting into a session and you're raising your vibrations and they're kind of like lowering theirs. Do you have any, like, insight into what that looks like for our loved ones? Like, what do they have it's okay if not. I'm just so curious, like, what they kinda have to do, like, on their end to, like, get on our level a little bit. Because I think that's what's
Yeah.
so hard for us as humans, as, these ego beings
Mhm.
that we are of, like, you know, how to just make that connection.
Sure. So when you talk about the
Mhm.
veil, for me, I don't usually use that term. I hear it, I see
Mhm.
it, all the time, but I don't actually use that term myself, and I think it's just because I don't particularly perceive it. Like when I think of the veil, I think of the visual representation of a veil. So I think of like a thin
Right.
fabric or something like
Yeah.
that. And to me, that's that doesn't really resonate
Okay,
with
yeah, how
me.
would you describe.
It might be literal, but it for me personally, it doesn't really
Okay.
resonate. I don't have a problem with it, but I don't use it
Mhm.
myself. Now, when you talk about direction, a lot of times when I'm talking to my loved ones, I'll kind of go like this, but that's really more
Yeah,
metaphorical, in my
yeah.
opinion, because I think about, we think of like heaven being up
Up, right.
above, and but when I'm actually perceiving energy, the place that I perceive it the most is right
Oh,
here
how interesting.
on my, like for me, I've noticed that I actually have a slight bias where I perceive energy more strongly on my left side than I do on my right side. And I perceive it more like right here than I do above or below this spot. So this is my hot spot.
Okay.
Like, when my mother passed away in 2012, right after she passed, right in this spot, I could feel like it's almost like a thickening of the atmosphere.
Mm,
And even now, like if I'm doing a criminal murder investigation or a missing person case, I will use that. Like if I want some confirmation that what I'm getting is directly from the spirit and not psychic,
right.
then I had this missing person case where I said, if I'm truly perceiving you and you are truly in spirit, I want to feel a thickening of the atmosphere right here. And then he did proceed to give me that. And so I'm like, okay,
Wow.
I believe that he's passed. And I'm so sorry,
Okay.
which, turned out to be
Oh
accurate
my
later when they did
gosh.
find him. But that's like for me, when we talk about direction, this is my hot spot. But theoretically, like when we talk about where spirits are, I feel like they are any place
Mhm.
around us, like in our world or in the atmosphere or in space
The
or in like
ether sort
basically
of.
any one,
Yeah,
because I don't feel like energy has limitations that
right.
way. And then the last thing that you asked about was
Mhm.
vibration. So if you can picture, for example, picture a ceiling fan,
Mhm.
right? And it's when it's at full speed and it's going around so fast, you cannot see the
Right.
blades, right? So that vibration is so high, so fast that you can't perceive it.
Okay, right.
But if you put the ceiling fan on low, it can still vibrate and then you can make out there's a fan blade,
Okay, yes,
right?
right.
So when you talk about vibration, I feel like when spirit is not inside their body, when they're not limited by the density of the physical
Mhm.
world, and then it's spirit, it's all energy, then that energy can vibrate, supremely
Mhm.
high. Whereas when we're in the physical body, we have to kind of deal with the density of the physical world. So that's where I feel like the breathing deeply, adjusting our
Yeah.
mindset, and that's kind of how we raise our vibration. Now, how do spirits actually lower their vibration to meet us?
Not
I
sure.
don't know.
Yeah, because
I believe it's probably something along the lines of focusing and intending and really like
yeah.
putting a lot of energy
Okay,
into it.
yeah.
But I'm just
Yeah,
guessing.
'cause, thank God, not there yet, so I guess we don't know for sure. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. I really appreciate that analogy because I think as humans, we need that, right? To try and wrap our minds around
Uh-huh.
it and visualize, okay, like, what does it feel like? What does it look like? How does it work? I think some of our biggest questions are the whys, the hows, like, we want answers. So, but what a process, and also just, I think it's so fascinating to me how, people like you who do have this amazing gift can just experience it so differently and have different signs and symbols. This is one of my last questions for you, but do you find that you kind of mentioned which one might be like a little bit stronger for you, but is there one that spirit tends to kind of uh, activate more for you, whether it's hearing, seeing, whatever, or it just totally depends on spirit?
I I personally believe it depends on the medium,
Okay.
what is strong for
Yeah.
them. Because like in my case,
Mhm.
clairsentience, which includes, well, that's basically
Feeling,
feeling.
right.
So it can be both emotions, being an empath, or the physical
Right.
feel. So for me, clairsentience is probably my strongest. That or claircognizance,
Mhm.
but that's definitely among the strongest. I'm pretty good with the others, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairalience. The smell of the clairalience, I didn't used to have that at all,
Wow.
like ever. But I developed it the more I've been using my skills. Psychic skills are just like a muscle, the more you work it out, the stronger you
Yeah.
get. So I've developed psychic skills now that I didn't have when I first started as a medium.
So cool. Can I ask you really quick too? When did you start doing media or like readings for people? Was that kind of like right away or was that
Well, the thing with mediumship work is you really kind of have to do
yeah,
it.
gotta get your hands
You
dirty.
can't just think about it. And so I studied uh all of this stuff. Like I said, I've read
Mhm.
books and spent time in meditation and had connected with other psychics and mediums. But what I did the first time I ever did any mediumship work was after, like towards at the end of that month, and I was lying down meditating in a dark room, and I was just like kind of raising my vibration. And then I heard the name Joyce, and I started thinking about, oh, I know someone named Joyce, my college roommate's mom.
Whoa.
Oh, how interesting. And then I thought, she passed about a year ago. That's right. I think I saw it on Facebook. Magical mystery tour. What? Okay, sit up. I start journaling. I start writing down. I'm getting magical mystery tour. I'm getting a small dog. I'm getting slippers. I'm seeing sitting on a cloud waving. Okay, so I'm getting all these things. So when I was done, I called up my old high school roommate. I'm like, hey, and this is gonna sound weird,
It's a
but
curiosity.
and so I listed all these things. And well, as a matter of fact, my mom and I did go see the Magical Mystery Tour together. But but she's like, but a lot of people saw that. Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I did bring her slippers in the hospital, but that's a pretty normal thing, you know. Like so it's funny because she wasn't totally into
Mhm.
it, but I realized that I had gotten enough hits.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah,
forget
yeah.
that.
Like, you don't have to believe me, but I believe me, and
But
yeah,
right,
I know
right,
what I felt and heard and
right.
yeah.
But then so what I did after that is I did a few sessions for, like, close friends,
Yeah,
close
yeah,
family, but then I needed to move on because it's hard to channel for close friends, close family when you know the person you're channeling or
yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. It's hard to be evidential because I already know, what my mother-in-law might say, you
Mhm,
know?
yeah,
So what I did is I put it out there on the internet saying that I would do free readings in order to get the experience.
yeah. Amazing.
And it went viral, and I ended up doing multiple readings every night and every weekend after my day job for months.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
and just talk about building that muscle.
And
Wow.
I know, but even then I was like, this is too easy. And am I humoring myself?
Mm.
Like I still doubted. And one day I was doing a reading for some people, and I said, is there a Ray or a Roy? And everybody in the room gasped. His name is Roy Ray. And I was
Nailed
like,
both.
holy wow. Okay, I'm really
Oh
doing
my
this.
god. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, how uplifting that must have been. I can't even think of a better word for it, just wow, it's, really validating that connection. That is so beautiful.
Yeah, it felt
Oh
really
my
good.
gosh, and then just people feeling so uplifted themselves coming out of the reading with you, which I can attest to, I really did. I even, had to take a few minutes after that. I was like, "Wow," 'cause I had my
Oh,
cousin come through, and he had a message for my aunt, which was really special, a friend come through. I mean, people that I kind of wasn't sure would come through or, 'cause mom and dad usually do, and mom talks on dad's behalf a lot, and that's very on brand, and that's exactly what happened. But it was just so beautiful. My very last question for you, and this is, if you can remember a reading that has been particularly impactful, or if it was like a moment kind of like that, or maybe you've already mentioned it in this episode, but has there been like a reading or a specific moment within a reading that was just so like mind blowing? Maybe you surprised yourself, or maybe it was the reaction of someone that was just like, oh my God, like that just kind of stands out in your mind.
yeah. There have been
I bet.
so many just like amazing. Like I want to use the word
Yeah.
flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Where I'm like,
Oh,
what?
that's so
I
cool.
did like really? Like for example, here's one. I was doing a mediumship reading, and I said, I went on like for a couple minutes before I even said what I was getting. I was like, I'm getting something and it's just so ridiculous. I can't even imagine that this is going to make sense. So it's okay if it doesn't make sense. I just have to say what I get. I'm sorry, it's
Yeah.
weird, but that's like I gave all this long disclaimer
Right.
beforehand. And then finally I said, okay, I want to talk about an albatross around the neck.
Okay.
An albatross around the neck. I mean, like, there's that old myth or, story about the sailor who
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
why is this coming up? I mean, this isn't an albatross around the neck. It's like not a normal thing for our society
Right.
today, right? And my client just nonchalantly says, yeah, that makes sense. My uncle, who had brain cancer that you were just channeling, he had one on in his coffin. He loved albatrosses. He had
Oh
one on in his
my God. And they're just so calm about it.
yeah, albatross around the
That's
neck.
so
Yeah,
specific. Oh my God, talk about
and
evidence.
yeah, and I had another one that it was where I was like, I want to talk about an inflatable Tyrannosaurus Rex. Yep, that makes sense. You know, I had another one and I'm like, I want to talk about penguins. Oh, yep. My daughter loves penguins. And I made sure that I hid all the penguins in the room so you couldn't see them because I thought that she would bring penguins up in the reading
Oh
today.
my God.
Penguins.
There you
Yeah.
go.
And I got all of these on film and they're on my YouTube channel.
Wow. So you get like see it live. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how amazing. Wow. I had a feeling you'd have some good stories. So I'm glad I'm glad we finished with that question. Oh my gosh,
Thank
Kelly,
you.
thank you so much for just all of your insight and all of my random questions that I think a lot of listeners are curious about and just love hearing from mediums and different types of mediums and you're also so skilled but so unique and individual in the way that you read and but you've given so much insight also to just like finding a reputable one and things to look out for and just finding one that really resonates with you and I truly believe so much too that we are led definitely as far as hopefully most of us are led to finding a medium that really we kind of resonate with and I like to think that that happened here as well yeah so just being as open as we can about it even if we do have a little skepticism about it but I think it's just a testament to like they're not as far as away as we might feel like they are sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So,
Kelly,
well, it's been such a pleasure,
oh my
Tara.
gosh,
Thanks so
me
much.
too. Can you quickly, before we close out, and this will all be in the show notes as well, but if people want to work with you, have a reading with you, etc., where can they find you?
Yeah. The easiest way to get in touch with me is my
Mhm.
website, channelingwhitelight.com.
Perfect.
That has all of my information about my services, my sliding scale
Mhm.
rates, my mentorship service. It's got video excerpts of my actual readings. You can read my reviews, see my full availability, book appointments, all of that. I have a very robust website
Yeah,
at channelingwhitelight.com. And then, of course, you can link to all my other social media if you'd like to follow people on social
absolutely.
media.
It's amazing. Sounds great. Kelly, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time today. Again, it is just such a testament to like the validation that we can get or just the you know, just the relief that like, okay, yes, they're here, they're seeing everything. Like I said, not as far away as we think. It's just such it can bring so much peace and catharsis to our heart and our
Yeah.
mind when, we can connect with them. So thank you so much for the work that you do. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains, and on Instagram and TikTok at Life with Grief Podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.